All right, once I drop the backdrop, then it is time.
Okay. All right. This meeting is called to order. It is a special meeting of the Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections called on October 23rd, 2020. I'm Mary Carol Cooney, chairperson, and I'm joined this morning by my colleagues, Ms. Fernetta Keith Newridden, Mr. Mark Wingate, Mr. Aaron Johnson, and Dr. Kathleen Ruth. We have one announcement prior to beginning our meeting, and that is that this teleconference meeting is authorized pursuant to section 50-14-1G of the official code of Georgia because of the public health state of emergency declared by Governor Kemp on March 14th, 2020, and renewed most recently on September 30th, which affects large gatherings within state and local government meetings due to COVID-19, and because means have been afforded for the public to have simultaneous access to this teleconference. Ladies and gentlemen, you have in front of you an agenda. There are now 5 items on the agenda. I trust you have all 5 of those. Please take a moment to look at them and let me know if you have any additions or corrections.
Looks okay.
Okay, I take that as a motion to approve the agenda.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Pardon, is that a second?
Yes, second. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve this agenda. All in favor say aye, and in addition, raise your hands
Aye.
for our secretary.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. It is unanimous. All right. Item number 2 is communications and responses from the public. Ms. Bodison, do we have any members of the public wishing to be heard?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, which is the approval of an intergovernmental agreement, IGA, for the municipality of East Point. And Mr. Barron, I'd like you to speak to this. And do you know why East Point has delayed in bringing this forward? And you're muted right now. Please unmute.
I do not know the reason for the delay, but I do know that it is that is the standard contract and that we need to get it approved.
Okay, so this will allow us to conduct the presidential contest within East Point?
No, this will allow us to. They have something on the ballot that this will allow us to conduct their election.
Okay, in addition to the presidential election, yes, and other the Senate elections and others. Okay. All right. This is the standard form.
Yeah.
We will be paid.
No, this is not one of those elections where we're paid. Since we're already having an election, they don't pay any extra money.
And that may account for their delay. All right. Members of the board, you have in front of you the intergovernmental agreement for election services between Fulton County and the city of East Point. I understand this is our standard format that is being used. So will anybody make a motion on it?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve this intergovernmental agreement. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, it looks unanimous. Thank you very much. It is approved. Then our next item is an authorization recommended by the Election Security Task Force, and we are joined this morning by Ms. Anna Roach, who is right now muted, but will unmute, the Chief Operating Officer for Fulton County, to explain why we are being asked to make an authorization. Ms. Roach, and thank you for coming to join us.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Thank you for this brief opportunity to provide information and request your approval on actions that we believe are important to help us ensure the security of our elections. As you may or may not know, the county formed a task force that is aimed at collaborating with our municipalities across the county on ensuring that our participants in the electoral process are safe and are not subject to any intimidation or any prevention of the exercise of their right to participate in that process. We have met 3 times as a task force and are making decisions around providing resources toward that effort. When we developed our evacuation procedures, we determined that there is a need for the Board of Registration and Elections to delegate responsibility to the elections chief to make certain decisions in a hurry as a part of our emergency response. And so today, what my request is that this board authorize the elections director to take whatever actions are necessary to close, move, or establish polling places between this date up into election day, November 3rd, in the event of an emergency and in the event an emergency requires him to do so, as communicated by law enforcement or members of the Fulton County Election Task Force. That is the request. Again, it's for you to delegate that authority to make emergency decisions on that day. And that concludes my summary, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Questions or discussion?
Currently, yes, ma'am.
All right, Ms. Newridan.
Currently, we have emergency guidelines written into the statute as far as what to do in cases of emergency. How would this be different from that?
Which statutes are you speaking of?
That in cases of emergency, that you as chair can call an emergency meeting within 24 hours to make decisions on emergency matters.
This would delegate and authorize the elections director to take that rather than me having to convene a meeting.
Okay.
And just to provide a little additional context, it's important in situations that we're contemplating around bomb threats or immediate threats to the safety and participation at the location. And that would be a scenario, I forget what board member that was asking the question. That would be a scenario that would not allow for the chairperson to convene a meeting in order to make a decision.
I guess my question is, and thank you so much, Ms. Roach, I definitely agree that that these things should be considered, but is there, I guess I'm trying to figure out, you guys are saying that you're gonna need less than 24 hours to make decisions. The challenge I have is not the ability for Rick to do it, because I think that he can do that, is polls just closing. So between now and the election is less than 2 weeks. And we've been having issues with notifying voters about the already changes to 90 polls that are made. So in fact, I just got an email last night from St. Cathedral Towers. And the poll that was right next door to them has been moved to a mile down the street. It's a senior facility. So my concern is not delegating the authority. My concern is properly notifying voters showing up to a poll that's not there and not knowing where to go. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Ringer raised her hand. I thought she was gonna add content.
Okay, I just wanted to explain my understanding, particularly with the security task force. They were more so thinking about emergencies on the day of, on election day. Right. If a bomb threat is called in and they have to get everybody out the poll, then what do we do to allow those people to vote? Things of that nature. You know, if the buses are already, you know, if that happens to, you know, more than 2 locations and the buses are, you know, being utilized already, then we have to be able to open another poll so those people can vote.
And
So
currently, what's the current procedure on election day for an emergency legally?
So it says the superintendent can change. And remember that this board, we had a discussion and some consternation about what we have in our bylaws about, you know, the superintendent duties that are delegated to the director. And so, you know, we wanted to be clear that you all would delegate the authority to the director on election day so that they would not have to necessarily try and call a meeting to effectuate how they would erect a new polling location if necessary. Of course, on election day, they would have signage, they would have people posted, you know, at the prior place if necessary. But this was like extreme emergency, you know, bomb threat, someone brandishing a weapon inside the polling place. We've got to get people out and get them to someplace else to vote.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
May I add that?
Thank you so much for that context. My quick question before I turn it over, Rick, in your years of being here, how many times has that happened on election day?
0.
Okay. That's it for me. That's it for me.
Well, Ms. Ringer and I did a little research together, and I guess it was not on election day, it was an early voting day. Adams Park Rec Center, we had several years ago, we had a sewage overflow, and the health services of Fulton County wanted that polling place closed immediately. And we had a very angry voter who didn't want us to close it. We had no choice. And so Mr. Barron closed it. And so, and we moved them. But that is the kind of thing that has happened in the past that we were able to uncover. And I hope it's not that, and I hope it's not a bomb, but things happen.
I think that was the one where we moved it to Adams Park Rec Center, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Are those your questions, Ms. Nuruddin? Are you okay? Any other questions? Mr. Johnson, unmute yourself. And
actually, most of my questions, I thank Ms. Roach and Ms. Ringer for their comments, because it kind of touched on the types of things that I was going to ask about. Could we give specific examples? And I think one of Ms. Nuruddin's points and some of the angst that we get from some of our voters is that we want to be sure that this is not something that will happen in extreme circumstances. We think it's perfect. At least I do. I won't speak for anybody else just yet. We think it'll be perfect, but we just want to be clear to the public that the whole point of this is in an extreme circumstance, and Rick has to make a really quick decision that it might take a little much to get all 5 of us together, even if we're sitting around waiting for anything to happen on election day, but gives him the authority to go ahead and move and make something happen. I don't know if you've been reading the news in the last couple of days, but even on the federal level, we're getting indications that it's possible that there could be some election day disruptions. So I think this would be able to go in a manner that will allow for the department, or Rick and the department, to make smart decisions if something like that were to happen. Now, of course, we hope nothing happens. We hope that it's a smooth election day, but I appreciate having a plan in place, because I get that question a lot. What is our plan for any disruption? So thank you for that. That's it, Madam Chair.
Okay, Dr. Ruth.
Yes, I'm definitely in support of this delegation of authority. I would just add that I think it's also important that the director inform us when those things happen. He's able to make those decisions on the spot, but I think it's really important that we're informed so that we know how to manage when we get emails or information from voters, and it's important for us to have that.
Ms. Ringer?
I wasn't sure if the board was aware as well, or Ms. Roach shared that there will be a peace officer at each of the locations. on election day. So that is something else that the task force has put in place.
Okay.
Can I,
Now,
can I add about the peace officer?
yes.
Thank you so much. I noticed that I noticed that at CT Martin, which is one of the many polls I monitor on election day. And just for the record, so everyone knows that the election superintendent and the registrars are required by law to be available on election day. So it's not an option for us to be just unavailable. And whatever this body decides to do as far as delegating authority is just, I mean, I support whatever this body decides to do, but what I don't want to see happen that's definitely happened in the past is we found out information on the news before Rick told us. And me and Aaron are going to get phone calls way before it hits the news anyway. So I know that in the past, I have taken calls about polls that I just didn't know about. So that's the challenge. That's my biggest concern, is that the decisions are made. Rick is going to be busy handling the crisis, and then be responsible for managing the crisis and the piece of the superintendent and the registrar piece, which is technically our job to do that. So I just that's things that's happened in the past, is that we found out by WSB, AJC.com, or reporters email us and ask us for comments. So without us having that advanced knowledge, so that I mean, I get it. You know, I can get into foreboding as well as the next person about what if a typhoon, and what's going to happen if Rick dies on election day, and then he has the authority to make the change. Who knows? But I think that these safeguards are in place. This board is in place because it's a collective effort to manage this whole entire process. So back to the peace officer. I saw Atlanta police officers standing in the door of CT Martin pretty much all day long, every day last week of the poll. And I personally don't have an issue with Atlanta police officers and seeing them. I love them and I'm an advocate of the police. However, nationwide, there's been a conversation about voter intimidation. And I just, a police officer standing in the door, I don't think that should be. I think they should be in the poll, but not directing voters or, telling voters to come to them. And that's pretty much what I saw at CT. It's a great idea, but sometimes in the application of great ideas, sometimes it's just not smart to do or the best thing to do. But I have seen them definitely in CT, but the officer in CT just stands in the polls, just stands in the door. He's posted in the door of a poll. And so I have to think about not just myself, but every voter. And that's my challenge with the peace officers. I think they should be there. I think they should be visible. But as far as directing voters, telling them to sit and to come into the poll, I just think that it's an unnecessary intimidation, especially in this climate today.
Ms. Nuridan, if I may speak to what you just said, our next item is one in which your remarks are noted right now, and we will discuss that a little bit, which is about this is, I think, our only action item, and the next one is to tell you, yes, about a plan that is in motion right now, and Ms. Ringer and I are noting what you have just said for the plans that are being made. Now, Ms. Roach, I have jotted down that I understand that you are asking this Board of Registration and Elections to delegate any authorization necessary to our elections director to take whatever actions are necessary to close, move, or establish polling places between this date up to and including Election Day, November 3rd, in case an emergency requires him to do so, as communicated by law enforcement or members of the Fulton County Election Task Force. Is that your request?
Yes.
All right. Do I have someone on the board willing to make that motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Wingate and seconded by Mr. Johnson, I think spoke first. Yes, no, Dr. Ruth, yes. All right. Ms. Bodison asks that we both say aye or nay and raise our hands at the appropriate time. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Ruth, was that an aye? Yes. Ms. Nuruddin, was that an aye?
No.
No. All right, we have all in favor, aye, all opposed. No. All right, Ms. Bodison, do you have that? Thank you. The motion passes. And Ms. Roach, thank you so much from taking time from what I know is your busy day to join us.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
You are excused. You are welcome to stay. And that will bring us to item number 5, which is an update on legal restrictions for activities at or near polling or vote counting venues. And concerning this, we have had a number of inquiries and statements of concern about the rules pertaining to poll watchers, poll workers, representatives of organizations, persons who are not representing anybody but wish to go inside the enclosed space, people using cell phones, actions by municipal police officers. And Ms. Ringer and I and other concerned organizations have had some discussions on this, and Ms. Ringer made a presentation to the Election Security Task Force. It came to you very lately, through no fault of her own, about what the statutes are concerning actions by voters, their rights, the rights of the public, the rights and obligations of poll watchers, candidates, taking photographs, soliciting votes, wearing campaign paraphernalia, where things can take place. And I thought that was all really good. The next thing is to get this and other sources communicated to our poll managers and to our officers. And in regard to that, we have been extremely gratified that retired or former senior judge and chief judge of the Fulton County Superior Court, who has been the Fulton County attorney and therefore the attorney for the Board of Registration and Elections, has volunteered to head an effort to synthesize and communicate this using other senior Superior Court judges. This is Senior Judge Elizabeth Long. And therefore, we are going to get together very quickly and figure out a means of communicating what the law is and giving it to our poll managers, our poll workers, our municipal police officers, so that we have one voice, presumably accurately stating the law to anybody carrying on activities around our polling places. And I wanted to let you know that that will be taking place. It will be taking place perhaps right after this meeting, getting this in motion, hopefully getting it finalized within a day or two, and you'll have a copy of whatever it is that we come up with. And that is my report on that. Any questions or discussions? Ms. Nuruddin.
So right now we are required to post that, the statute and the law around campaigning around polls. that's already posted in our polls. So I'm trying to, and I think whatever you guys want to get together and do is great. I just want you to know that we're already required to have a mandatory postings in every poll already.
Right, and I have seen those. That's for campaigning. What has
Right.
been raised as a matter of concern, and you know this as well as I do, persons with video cameras wanting to come into polling places, wanting to come into vote counting places, and step over lines and monitor closely, look at people voting. I have actually myself gotten into an argument with a member of the media saying, I've seen other people taking photographs of people voting and I've got a video here, I want to do that. We need to get all of those things clear as well so that our managers and their poll workers are giving out something consistent, and hopefully not only consistent, but also in compliance with the law. And one of the things that I just received recently, it won't be the Bible, but it will be helpful to look at, is Gwinnett County's rules for their poll managers. And I hope from other places that we can look at and make sure that we are doing the right thing and consistently communicating it.
Right. And the photography, video, and cell phones is also a posting that's required in every poll in Georgia. What you guys are creating is just going to be another posting to add, or are you thinking about something else?
No, I'm thinking of something else.
Okay.
I'm thinking of two things. We'll see if they're necessary. One is a synthesis, and of course I have seen the notices that you've just mentioned on the outside of the door, which may or may not be read by persons going in, but I'm talking about a so-called cheat sheet for our poll managers to be able to respond quickly when a question is asked of them, and know when and how to ask for help. And it may be that these senior judges will be able, when a question of some, I'll call it sophistication, is raised, some complexity, that they can be helped out the way that our hotline helps with other questions. Okay, other questions or comments? All right, this is just a report, but Dr. Ruth.
So this will be communicated to all poll managers, correct?
That is the plan.
Okay, and how will that be communicated? Will it be a separate kind of micro training so that everyone knows the specifics about the laws, or is it just going to be email? I would recommend that this would be a proactive training delivery for all poll managers and poll workers.
Okay, that we will take that, see if we can do that. We are, of course, working under a time constraint, but and it
can be as simple as doing it over a Zoom meeting, but I right. just think going through each of the laws is really important for them to understand, and making sure that it is delivered in a uniformed way.
I will carry that direction forward. Let me see, Mr. Wingate.
Madam Chair, in terms of this, there's at times during any particular point of an election day that the poll manager may not be present. Is there a protocol in terms of authority?
I have, where I voted a few days ago, there was an assistant, I asked to speak to the poll manager just because I was there. There was an assistant poll manager, and she said she was managing the polls. I hope that that is the way that it is across the county.
Will that be communicated?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't hear that. So
You did not hear that
I
from,
didn't hear that being part of what the scope of this education to the polls would be. So I
what
would
I
say
hope,
it would be extremely important because you could have someone sick, not show up.
right?
So the protocol or next in line, I think, has to be defined so that there is not any hiccup, in terms of the process.
It is my hope that the 4-page memo that you have been sent and hopefully received very recently
I'm looking at
is communicated in some form or another to everybody who is working at the polls. One thing that I'm thinking about is that feedback from poll managers may tell us that the first thing that should be communicated is about, say, campaigning and firearms rather than voters' rights, or it may be that it should be in exactly the order that it is. What I'm hearing the most about is poll watchers.
Yes.
And it may be that that has to be moved up to the front. That has to be emphasized a little more because that is not one of the things that Ms. Newridan mentioned is already posted about, say, firearms. So it may not be exactly as it is here, but everything in this 4-page memo, I would anticipate would be something that would be communicated.
Yeah. And the fact that the people who do have credentials as a poll watcher, I think the clarity as to their rights as a poll watcher are known.
Yes.
And I think at least coming out of the blocks on day one, October the 12th, I recall, that was not the case. And that case, in fact, was reported in the form of an email and 2 affidavits from these respective people. So I'm hoping that what transpired or allegedly transpired there, becomes part of the known process here so that these kinds of things do not occur. And thank the good Lord, so far, I haven't heard of any other cases where that has been an issue. So
after this meeting, at some point, I'm going to ask you for the details that you've just mentioned. It may be that you've sent them to me by email, and
I was only a recipient of copy, but I believe, and I'll go back and check. Thank God at this age my memory's not that good, but I'll go back and take a look. I think that the board was copied on that. I think Rick was copied on it. I can't remember who else. But if not, I'll be more than happy to get that to everybody.
I will find that.
So that you can see what the allegations are. I have no earthly idea. I wasn't there, but I'll certainly communicate that if as required.
Right. I'll make sure we have that. Okay. Anything else from the board? This is an information item. I have taken note of what you've said, and I hope to address the concerns that you've raised.
Great. One last question. Is this the last agenda item, Madam Chair?
It is.
Oh, well, 2 questions. Rick, if you would, can you briefly discuss the viewing of the counting of the ballots process? Because I know it's a little different with the setup. Can you share the viewing of, you're on mute, you're on mute.
At State Farm?
Well, where in all the locations where counting will happen. So as far as the public access, how would that look?
The tabulation occurs at the warehouse on election night at 7 p.m. And so we will have a designated area for the public there.
It's going to be similar to the video monitors.
We can have those video, we'll have the video monitors set up as well as just having a public area too.
And the counting will only happen on English Street?
Yeah, we'll be scanning ballots at State Farm, but the tabulation happens at English Street.
Oh, thank you. And then the last thing, what I talked to you about earlier this morning, Rick, I just wanted you to talk a little bit about it just in case this happens to other voters. My mother went to vote in CT Martin yesterday, and she was given a green activator card to vote, and she wasn't ever used to seeing that. So her vote was correctly entered and counted on my voter page. So I just wanted you to talk about that just in case somebody else, because when she called me saying it was a green card with the chip and I had to activate it, I've never had to do it before. What is that? And I just wasn't able to kind of give that information to her. So I told her to tune in and you can explain it to her.
When a voter goes to vote and they check in during early voting, they're checked in ElectionNet and Easy Vote. And then a card is created, the green card, the activator card to which you referred. It is put into the poll pad and that activates the ballot. And then the voter takes that to the BMD, puts it into a slot on the ballot marking device, and that brings up the ballot. From there, the voter votes, and then the card is taken out, returned to the poll workers.
And that's different from the original process, how?
Well, it's the same as our old, I think the card that was used with the DREs in the old system was yellow.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Nerd, let me, you just hit on a point of interest. You said after your mother voted in person.
Yes, sir.
That how long was it before, and it's interesting, how long was it before you or she was able to see that voting record on MVP?
I checked this morning.
Okay.
Yeah. She voted yesterday morning.
Okay, so it was showing on MVP.
This morning. Now remember, Mark, we had some challenges at Johns Creek Environmental, and Rick, if you wanted to talk about that, that'll be good. This would be a good time to share. But in that case, some of your North Fulton voters, they weren't seeing it coming up. So yeah.
So when most of this, we have a team right now going through all the absentee ballot applications, which voters fill out. They initial and sign that application in the polling places. We have a team going through all those to audit them to make sure every one of them was entered into ElectionNet, which populates my voter page. On Monday through Wednesday last week, when ElectionNet was so slow, in order to get voters through, the staff at some of those polling places were checking people in through Easy Vote and then trying to save them in ElectionNet. It took so long to get those saved, or they would not save, and not all of them were done. So we have a team here that's either entering those or auditing them to make sure that they all are entered. If somebody scans a ballot, that's when their vote counts. And that is different from ElectionNet, in which the poll worker saves the voter's name as having voted. So that's what we're doing right now. Sharana has a team of 12 people going through all those applications.
Is this confined to Johns Creek?
No, there were 3 or 4 locations where there were quite a few applications that weren't saved. I believe it was Alpharetta Library, Johns Creek Environmental Campus,
Northside Library. Northside.
One. Oh yeah, Northside Library was the other one.
Okay. All right. Does that answer your question, Ms. Newridan?
Yes, thank you.
And I think it's important by Vernetta's comments here that, the inquiries, which I would say, at least on my side, have been more than normal, that people know to keep checking that My Voter page, because for them as a voter, that's really, as far as I think I know, at least, and please correct me, that that's the only way they have to go and validate the fact that their vote was in fact accepted.
Yeah, well, as long as it's accepted at the scanner, their ballot has been accepted. But we have to make sure that one of those absentee ballot applications is entered to give credit for voting in ElectionNet, which populates their voting history.
And Rick, doesn't that, once the voter card is issued as described, then I was under the impression that ElectionNet would then have that update immediately. Otherwise,
yes, as soon as
somebody, if you're waiting until you're pulling down at end of day scanning, the issue would be that a voter could turn around and go to Adams Park and vote again.
Yes.
If ElectionNet is not being updated.
Yes, and ElectionNet then updates the My Voter page, and that should happen almost instantaneously.
Exactly, and I think that's important to know, because if the state did have, as you have indicated, and that they were having those troubles, there's a gap in there.
Yes.
I'm not saying people took advantage of that gap because they wouldn't have known, but in terms of election security, that's an issue.
Yes.
For all of us. I don't care, Republican, it doesn't matter. That's an issue for all of us. And I would suggest that going through some kind of an audit process at elections that just people are going to be aware of that. I mean, I've had enough people that say, I voted in person, but it's not, I can't confirm that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm just, again, just for this, we need to keep our eye on that.
Well, and that's one of the things, I'm on a state task force now led by Secretary Raffensperger. And that's one of the things that I believe will be discussed is whether there need to be major improvements need to be made to ElectionNet, or whether it's going to get replaced, because there are certain things about it. And, it has been operating much better since Wednesday, but I think Monday through Wednesday were painful for the poll workers. I mean, it was really, really painful. And luckily, we have Easy Vote, which we're able to keep going and get voters through that. But that saving process for credit for voting is, as you say, Mark, which is a critical part of being live during early voting and making sure that is completed.
Yeah.
Dr. Ruth.
So Rick, this is a great conversation. I'm glad that we're having this. And I've also been getting emails from voters who are saying that they scanned their paper ballot, but when they went on My Voter page, it was not, it showed them not being, their ballot not counting, or it wasn't updated.
Yeah,
and you're saying it should be instantly?
No, the scanner isn't connected to ElectionNet. So once your ballot is accepted in a scanner, that is a completely separate process. My Voter page or ElectionNet gets updated as you check in, and the ballot scanning is a completely separate process. There's no connection between them. So when a voter, what's that?
What would be the reason that they weren't able to see their?
From my understanding, from talking to some of the poll workers, and then talking to Sharon about it, is that when they went to process the check-in, they could not. It was just spooling and spooling and spooling. So a lot of times they couldn't tell if the application was ever saved, and then the next voter would come up. We were processing them in Easy Vote, which prints out the application, and then we also save that record in ElectionNet. Those are two different pieces of software. So to get the voters through the line, I think in terms of for the purposes of expediency, the poll workers were trying to get people through the line, and instead of waiting for ElectionNet, they were processing them, giving them credit for voting in Easy Vote, which it does not connect to ElectionNet. They were getting them through, giving them the applications, getting them checked in, and then the applications they weren't sure if they were entered, were getting set aside for later processing. So what we're doing is making sure that all of those got processed. But the scanner itself, when a voter takes a ballot from the printer, that once the ballot is accepted through the scanner, that ballot has been accepted, but it isn't tied to ElectionNet. Those systems are separate because there is no connection. The voting system isn't connected to anything.
But Rick, after you close then a poll at a particular date, then that record then is then being updated so that, to Kathleen's point, the voter, and what Ms. Nurdin commented on, the voter should be able to, hopefully the following morning, look to see if then the fact that their vote has been counted.
Yes, and all of those applications should have been updated at night after they close.
I'm just saying that is how it's supposed to work.
That's how, yes. And it should be instantaneous when they check in. That's how it should operate.
Yeah.
But
so, my suggestion to the task force is going to be the same thing that I've been talking about to the Fulton delegation for several years, which is to go on to a model that's similar to what Texas uses, where counties can go offline. They can then get their own voter registration system to take the pressure off of having this statewide. You always have the statewide system as the umbrella that stores all the information, but each county should be able to go offline, have their own system that uploads nightly to ElectionNet. Then you don't have 159 counties jumping on with all the early voting, because a lot of our early voting sites have more staff than some of the rural counties have staff, and it bogs down the entire ElectionNet system, especially with now all of these absentee applications being entered and then the ballots coming in. There's so many more users getting into that system. They need to allow either the bigger counties or whatever counties want to drop off the system and go offline and have a more efficient way to have counties process voters. That way, then it's more on the early voting becomes a closed network on the county system.
So just my last follow-up question is, so can you confirm that all of the applications that were processed in Easy Vote have been reconciled in ElectionNet now, so that if a voter can go online to verify that their vote was counted or was included, they can would show that?
That is the process that is underway now. Sharon has a team of people doing that. And actually what they're doing is going through and looking at the individual paper applications rather than going through ENET, or rather than going through Easy Vote.
Okay, so I need to, from the voters who've emailed me about this, I need to let them know that this is underway, this is being reconciled, but their vote has counted.
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as their ballot was accepted at the scanner, their vote has counted.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
All right. Ms. Nurdin.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ruth. But please do remind them to continue to check that status on my voter page.
Yes.
And I just got a memo regarding some statutes around poll watchers and tabulation center. And I wanted to just clarify who can witness the tabulation. There's some misconceptions that you have to be appointed by a party to witness the tabulation process. and the general public can lawfully, within reason, within a reasonable number, can witness the tabulation and counting of votes. So I just this memo I got is excellent. It's well written, except it's a little ambiguous in that area as to who can watch, who can see, who can watch the tabulation and the counting of votes. So in some counties, they only have one poll where they count and conduct their elections. So, and that doesn't really apply to Fulton County because we're the largest, and our polls, we have 260 polls and a whole separate area for tabulation. So in some places that may be true, but in Fulton County, anyone from the general public within reason, a reasonable number of people can witness and view tabulation and counting of votes.
Thank you. Is that something that you can share? That memo, something you can share with us?
Yeah, you got it's in your email this morning. I mean, the memo is awesome. It's awesome, and it's definitely legally sound. It's just with our county, it's just a little different. Yeah, it's in
Have
your.
I already received that?
Yes, it's in there. Yeah.
Carol, she's talking about the email of the memo that we provided, but Ms. Neridan is pointing out that we may need to include additional information with respect to the tabulation center and who can.
Right. I mean, it's definitely legally sound. Yeah, it's legally sound and well written, and I think that the information is awesome. It's just that little point of clarity. So, but thank you so much. That's it for me.
Okay. All right. If that concludes our discussion subsequent to item number 5, is there any member of the board who wishes to go into executive session to discuss personnel or litigation matters? And seeing no one do that, let me thank you all for coming together at pretty late notice. I appreciate your cooperation. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Johnson raised 2 fingers, which I think seems
I couldn't get to the mute button fast.
Right. All in favor say aye and raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Rick, what are you doing?
What?
What are you doing?
We're live still.
Yes. Have a